Hello, low vision friends. This is Dr. Grandela again with another video. Today, our topic is on optical magnification. So last month we talked a little bit about video magnifiers, the digital counterpart to magnification here. We've gone over this in a couple different videos, but I wanted to make a shorter segment we could look at today. So I've got my camera focused down here at the desk because this is really an area where we're going to work a little more in near vision, reading power. This is one of the primary goals that drives people in. Now, optical magnification does include telescopes. We've already done a video on telescopes and driving, so if you're interested in that, go check out our Facebook page. It has that video from, I think it's actually a couple years ago at this point. But so we're going to pretend for a moment like the camera is our view and our eyeball down here to this near vision target. And we have a few different tools we want to talk about. Before we get too far though, I want to make a point of talking about natural ways to magnify. So if our target was to read something like a newspaper or a label or a book, one of the things we can look at is larger sizes of print. So we can see that this is a lot bigger, easier to read. Up here where it says travel as well can be much bigger and easier. We get all the way down here to little captions. That can be pretty tough to read. This is what we call object size or image size magnification. So just by having a bigger object to look at, it can be easier to see. One of the other simple natural things to do is to change the distance at which we're looking at things. So this camera has some autofocus in it, just like our eyeball does. And so as we bring this closer, we can get a bigger and bigger view. And you'll see that at some certain point, we're going to get out of what's usable focus. So we have to keep it within the realm of what's practical and usable. But here we can see that this article is much easier to read. Even little captions here we can bring in and get really nice and big. And that was much harder to do before, but it's quite a bit easier. And that's a change just of, about half a foot or so. So two really easy things before we get into actually changing glasses, changing magnifiers, would be think about changing the size of what you look at. Think about changing the distance at which you hold things. Devices like a Kindle or a Nook, that's another way to go about changing the size of books if you don't want to carry around a giant heavy book with what you're reading. So let's assume you've tried some of those and we're not finding success with that. And so we go into the doctor and we want to talk about changing the power of our reading prescription. Now you may be doing something as simple as going and getting an over-the-counter pair of +3s. That may feel more magnified to you. The truth is that if we take a 3x magnifier and compare that to a 3 times pair of glasses, you might even be able to see in this video there's quite a bit of difference between those lenses. 3 times in glasses power or diopters is not the same as 3 times in magnification. Usually the magnification you're going to multiply by about 3 or so to get the actual diopter power in glasses. So a 3 handheld magnifier is more similar to a +8 pair of glasses, depending on how you do your calculations. So if we were to use a +3 pair of glasses, one of the things you'll notice is that the higher that reading power goes, the closer it forces you to hold things. So most people around the age of 40 or so start using reading prescriptions, and it starts at about a +1 or +150 on top of whatever your long distance prescription would be. And so here I've got a 250. This is typical for anybody 60 and older, pretty much. And so if we hold that up towards the camera can autofocus through that pretty well. And the camera acts like a young person's eyeball. So I take it away, it can autofocus again pretty quickly. And the problem is when we get to about 40 years old, we start losing that flexibility. And so when things get too close, we find that, we have to add this lens in and really get a little bit of extra power. So if we go up to a 3, we have to bring it a little closer for the focal distance. If we go to a 4, which is often the limit of what we can do as far as a bifocal or progressive, that's going to bring things, again, dramatically a little bit closer. Now, it may be hard to tell the difference with these lenses, but you can see or you may be able to see the switch in focus that the camera lens is having to do. So if you didn't have that ability to switch back and forth, having this high-powered lens may make a big difference. Now, as we go higher and higher in power, it forces us to bring our target closer and closer to allow our eyes to see it. Eventually, we get to the point where this camera can't accommodate for that change in distance. And that's where higher power lenses may make a big difference. And so we see the camera, now that I've added a +10 lens, which is about 3.5 times magnification, it's able to accommodate to that change. Okay, very quickly we see it catch up as long as we're in the right distance. If I bring this too far away, that high-powered lens is no longer going to work anymore. So when you go in to see the doctor and you talk about having a high-power pair of glasses, it is absolutely possible. Just it comes with the knowledge that if we put a high-powered lens in front of your vision, everything far away is going to look awful. A high-power pair of glasses like this, a +10 or 3.5 times magnification, requires you to hold things closer in order to get the vision. But now it is quite a bit bigger and easier to see. So young kids may be able to do this without any additional lens. You'll find a lot of young people who have vision impairment will constantly hold their phone right up towards their face. They'll lean into TV screens and things like that. With vision loss, that can be okay. If it's somebody who has no vision loss and is doing it, we do get concerned about causing an eye turn, which is called strabismus, and vision loss can accompany that. That's called amblyopia. But in cases of vision impairment, it may be necessary at times in order just to see things that we hold our targets up and close. Now, if we go even stronger, you'll see that the thickness in these lenses are changing. We did a +10 just a moment ago, okay? And that's pretty thin still, but we bump up to a 20, you may be able to notice right away we're getting a much bigger size lens. The higher we go in that power, this is now about 6 times magnification. The higher we go in the power, the closer things have to be held, and the more finicky it is about being in just the right focal distance. So as we come up to the camera, you may see that everything's terribly blurry far away, but as I bring that newspaper up and close again, as soon as we get within the appropriate distance, we're starting to get a better image. I'm not quite close enough. Let me readjust a little bit. My camera's not working well with me here. There we go. We are quite a bit bigger than we were before. You may be able to notice the shakiness of the image now and the side blur caused by the lens. There are going to be distortions in lenses that are this powerful, and if we're not in just the right place, those distortions may cause significant blur. And you see as I go in and out with the text here that we're going to lose that focus pretty quickly. Okay, when we take that lens away, the camera's not able to accommodate that at all. So pulling away, we can finally bring it into a view, but that's going to be too far away for our eyeball to get the good view. So we've got to be terribly close with something like this. When we get to about 6 times magnification, I'm really thinking about a patient having to hold this right on top of their nose. And we can build glasses like that. We call them microscope glasses. Typically, we make them out of specialty labs so that they'll be as thin as possible and as light as possible. They can be made in any standard lens, but you'll find that those are the Coke bottle glasses, as patients like to say. So that's a little bit about doing optical magnification in glasses. But many people will come into my office and say, "Doctor, why would I ever want to hold things up so close? That doesn't feel good to my vision. That's not practical to what I'm doing." And that's where we may turn to handheld magnifiers instead. Now, you may see the spread of magnifiers I have in front of me going from 2.5 on the left-hand side of the view all the way up to 7 on the right-hand side, and then they get smaller and smaller as we go. Again, one of the issues, as we get a thicker, stronger lens, we get more aberrations on the side. So manufacturers will make the high-powered handheld magnifiers quite a bit smaller to accommodate that issue. So when you use a handheld magnifier, I would always tell you, make sure you get one that has a light on it. So as we have a light, that will increase your contrast. And so one of the issues when you magnify is that you'll get less light coming through the system at times. Most patients who have vision loss also have contrast loss. So turning on that extra light is going to make everything stand out a little bit brighter and a little bit bolder. Now I'm already getting some magnification on the page, but I know kind of the distance to hold this just by rote memory. If you haven't used the handheld magnifier before, I'll usually tell you to put it right on top of the page and then pull it back till it gets as big and as well focused as possible. You'll see if we go too far, that's not going to look good at all. So we've got to, again, maintain an appropriate distance. And here you'll see a little bit of distortion at the edges of the lens as I move this around. So it'll be important to pan your device back and forth, up and down, as you go through your reading material. The stronger we go, so if we jump up to a 4 times from that 2.5, you'll see that we're getting some automatic bigness in that magnification right away, even though I'm not quite in the right area, but we have a much smaller field of view this time. So again, I would put this right on top, and I would pull back until I feel like it's as big as I want it, and as comfortable and as clear as I can get it. And I would pan back and forth. You may notice that the distortion is more prominent now on the side. And because we have a smaller view, we're having to move back and forth a little more. So let's keep jumping up. Let's go up to 7 times. Okay, very, very large amount of magnification. Very quick change. I'm not able to pull that nearly as far back, and I have a much smaller field of view than I did before. So one way we can counter that smaller field of view is to bring the magnifier up closer. Now you may notice something funky here is that if I'm a little too far away, things will be upside down. I've got to get just at the right distance again, okay, and hold that up close, and I can get a little bit bigger view through here than I did before. Now again, our camera may play a few tricks with us with the accommodation here, because it's not quite the same as a human eye. But for any handheld magnifier, we're going to put it right on top, and we're going to pull back till it gets as big and as focused as we need it, and move back and forth as is appropriate. Now, handheld magnifiers can be great because they're illuminated, they're small and light, easy to fit in a pocket, they're relatively inexpensive. Most magnifiers that you're going to find over the counter are going to be something in the range of 2 to 3 times in power. Many of them do not come with lights, and that may be good enough for you. If you have relatively good vision, you may find you only need a small amount of magnification to get by. However, the worse vision gets, the more magnification you need, the more necessary it is to be precise in the power and the distances. And so I often recommend we get started with these as soon as we feel like we need them, and we get into that adaptation and behavior of how I'm going to hold things, how I'm going to use these tools to increase my vision. Now, that's not the end of the segment, not by a long shot. We have several other kinds of magnifiers that have been developed. There's several companies like Mattingly, who we have out in front of us, Optical, Eschenbach. Those are some of the big names that we deal with, who have made a variety of different magnifiers, including what are called stand magnifiers. Stand magnifiers are designed to sit right on top of your target. If we pick it up and pull it away, it'll instantly get out of focus. It's designed to sit right on top. Many of these are in lower powers, but they typically go up to about 4 and 5 times power at maximum. So if we only need the lower half of these magnifiers, you may find that several of these are really good tools at your desk or table for long extended reading. Now I've got a bar magnifier as our first example. The bar magnifier a lot of people will like because I'm only getting about 2 to 3 lines at once. It does happen to have a little red bar inside that magnifier, a little line to help me keep my place. And some people will find that if all I'm trying to do is get through one article, and I don't want to see too many things at once because it's visually confusing, I can use this little bar to just slide through, and I'm getting 1 to 2 sentences at a time. It allows me to ignore the rest of what's going on, and it operates as a typoscope, as the name of a little card you would use to give you just 1 or 2 sentences at a time. So if you have a hard time distinguishing our object of interest from what's around it, we could really just focus on that bar. And we can move that right along. Now, bigger versions of this could cover more of the page, but one thing I like about this is it is small enough to fit inside, we figure the page of one book, we could fit most of the page right inside that bar, or a single, article in a newspaper could be really good as well. We also have dome magnifiers. Dome magnifiers, just like it sounds, would be round in shape, and they're going to be able to subtend a larger area of vision. And so the smaller one is really nice and light. We set it right on top of the page. As we pick it up, it's going to get out of focus pretty quick, and we just move that along. This is a really easy recommendation for kids with vision loss. It's simple to understand. It's easy to use in a classroom. It's easy to put into a backpack, and they are pretty well protected against dings and falls and damage. It's a pretty hard little plastic. You'd really have to work at that to make a problem there. Now, the bigger we go, the heavier it's going to be, but the more we're going to get all at once. So you may find that a certain size allows you to not have to move quite so much, going back and forth. But as we get to the bigger ones, unless you're using it to knock out a home invader, it's probably just a paperweight and a magnifier. I really wouldn't have you take that around in a purse, but you can see we're easily clearing both sides of the newspaper article here. And so for someone who wants extended reading, going through magazines, going through books, something that we can lay flat on a table or desk, we may find that a large dome magnifier is just a really easy tool. Now, even dome magnifiers, we can come in a few different shapes and sizes, a few different powers as well. So this is the cube version of that. If you want something square and with edges, you can do that. I really enjoy one by Eschenbach called the Macrolux. It does come with its own light. Now, it'll take a minute for the camera to catch up to that, but we get a much bolder, more black and white appearance to what's going on in our newspaper. So this is very similar to the bar magnifier, but it just comes with its own daylight light bulb lighting system. It is a little bit bigger and heavier. I would still leave this on a desk. I wouldn't walk around with it. But for those with contrast loss, a typical dome or bar, we're going to need an additional gooseneck lamp or something to give us that contrast boost. Here we have it put inside our stand magnifier. And so that can be just a really great tool. There we go. We were catching a little glare and we couldn't quite see through there. So that's a little bit about glasses, a little bit about handhelds, a little bit about stand magnifiers. Optical Magnification and Eschenbach do make stand magnifiers that are illuminated like these. They're a little bit bigger and bulkier, and I find most of my patients don't gravitate towards that. But even if we need something up to, about 13, 15 times in power, we can do handhelds of that size, and we can do stand magnifiers of that power. But I want to show one last tool. I really enjoy this. Here is another one by Eschenbach called the Scribalux. Now the Scribalux is raised up. It does have its own lighting system. This comes into that issue of, I like something that can sit on a table, but I'm trying to fill out a checkbook. Where I'm trying to fill out a crossword puzzle. So the idea here is that we can watch ourselves with whatever we're doing and get that magnification we need. You may also use, several companies like Eschenbach, Mattingly, OttLight, Daylight have floor lamps and desk lamps that have a magnifier inside of them. The Scribalux is a small version of that. So we're just thinking a little more portable, something we can move around the house a little bit. Whereas one of these desk or table lamps you'd probably leave in one place. Now, again, most of these devices are going to run 5 times in power or less, but there are versions we can get that are much stronger. If we're doing one that's raised up like this, it gets harder and harder to go to high powers and use that appropriately because the distance between the lens and the material has to get so close. So in review today, the higher the power goes, the more finicky it's going to have to be about being in just the right position and used, hands-free or using a hand to use the device. There's advantages and disadvantages to each mode. If you're someone who wants sewing or crafting or artsy-fartsy kind of stuff, then you're probably going to need a high-power pair of glasses so that whatever you're working on, you can hold up terribly close and, thread the needle or pick the, wrong stitch that you did or see the colors and details in the painting that you're doing. And the adaptation may be that you just have to get incredibly close to your material. If you're just trying to go grocery shopping or just trying to spot read, if I just want to see what's the label in my letter, then a handheld magnifier may just do fine to get that in and a little bit bigger. Turning on the light may help as well and see, okay, who's that addressed to, or what's the, price that I have on my bill, or I just need that spot of information. If we want to sit down and read for extended periods, that's where having a stand magnifier may be a really good choice. And last but not least, if we're trying to write underneath of things, that's where having a raised up, elevated magnifier, like something that sits on the desk, like the Scriba Lux, something like there's called the yo-yo magnifier by Daylight. Looks like a little yo-yo that opens up into a lamp and a magnifier, or one of these desk or floor lamps that has an attached magnifying lens. Any of those would work great in order for you to put your hand underneath and be able to write with. So that's our intro into optical magnification. Check out our video on telescopes if you're interested in that. And tune back in September for our next monthly informational webinar. I'm shooting this one a little bit early because I'm out at a satellite location tomorrow. And so those of you who wanted to join for Zoom, I apologize. But if you want to email me questions at info@viewfinderlowvision.com, I'd be more than happy to dive into topics you're more interested in or answer questions from any previous videos. Otherwise, you can always reach out to me at the clinic, and you're welcome to check us out at our website at viewfinderlowvision.com. Have a wonderful rest of your day.